I think we've got everybody. It's about 10:45, so it's time to get started with our session. I'm going to be talking about the Ernst & Young Microsoft SharePoint Server 2013 search adoption. So I'm going to talk a little bit about search itself, a little bit about our program and how that's worked, as well as how we achieved success, and a little bit about the success we have achieved. So if that's not what you're here to listen to, then please feel free to leave. I hope it'll be entertaining. I hope you'll enjoy yourself, but get started and go ahead and talk a little bit about our organization. Oh, this isn't working. There we go. Context for our organization. EY is an organization of member firms across 150 countries. We collaborate globally. We have people in many different sites. They're not all on-premise inside EY offices. For the most part, they're on-site at customer client sites. The organization is constantly growing and evolving. And just to talk a little bit about what we mean by that, this is an apocryphal story. I don't have any data to back this up. But I heard whenever I first came to work at EY that in any given year, about 25% of our people are in their first year with the firm. And about 25% of our people are in their last year with the firm. Well, what that means is that those people who are in their first year, they need to know and understand the work that we've done for the client by those people who are in their last year. And they need to be able to find the work we've done for that client in the past, and they need to know the methodologies, the processes, and the behaviors that we've exhibited with that client, the projects we've done with them. So that becomes a really interesting challenge in a diverse and global organization like ours. We have 190,000 people at this point. They deliver this client experience. It needs to be connective, responsive, and insightful. So they could be working, as I said, from any site in the nation. A large population of them are the millennial group, so they're very used to working with technology. They're used to being self-sufficient through the internet and connected by social networks. But we have to be able to connect people to each other and to the best of EY's knowledge at any time and any place. So that becomes a real challenge whenever you're looking at a diverse set of applications. It becomes a lot easier if we're all on the same application. And we are moving towards SharePoint. How are we doing in terms of this ability to connect people to each other and the best of EY's knowledge anytime, anywhere? So this next slide, there we go. This might be a bit of a problem. Just gives you an idea of the success we've had. And this is the measure that I've chosen for success, which is around the number of queries that are run by people and the number of searchable items there are in the database. So within SharePoint, we've gone from, the lower line is our legacy environment, about 200,000 queries per month, to well over 1 million queries per month. We may be plateauing. If you look at that chart, it does look like we're coming to a point where 1 million is going to be about the level we're going to hit. And in terms of searchable items, we've gone from 0 items in SharePoint to almost 10 million in SharePoint as of now. This graph is as of February. We're adding about 1 million items per month to the index. Sometimes a little less, sometimes a little more, depending on the use that we have. So what is making people use this product? And they're using it significantly, they're using it daily, they're using it all the time. I think that we achieved the success, which is 500% growth in the use of search and 800% growth in the amount of content available. We did this by paying attention to 5 key success factors. These key success factors are really based around search, and they're around having the right content available, optimizing that content, measuring search, being aware of how search works and making sure we have the right relevancy, and then making a great user interface for search and listening to our users. So I'm now going to talk a little bit about each of these key factors and how they've impacted our success. Okay? So indexing the right content. So when we look at content and we think about the experience with content, you think about search, the first thing that probably comes to your mind is Bing or Google, and that internet experience where you run a query and you get the right object back in the first page of results, and it always happens. And why does that happen? That's because the right content's available to answer your query. You're going out to Google, you're running that query, and it's bringing back content that is available and that is made available to you, and the person creating that content spends time optimizing that content. But if it's not there, Google only indexes like 7 to 10% of the web. So if what you're looking for is not in that 7 to 10%, then it's not going to be available in the search. But they make sure that they do index the right 7 to 10% of the content. Similarly, in your organization, you need to make sure that you're indexing the right content for your users. I talk about 3 key items for search. This is kind of I'm trying to sell my home right now, so it's kind of a real estate joke as well. The 3 key items for search are, come on, I'm going to have to come over here. Content, content, and content, right? Just like real estate. Location, location, location. That's what my real estate agent keeps telling me. My house isn't in the right location, so that's why it's hard to sell. But the content we have but we don't make available, that content that's not in your index, or it's not optimized for search, so your user doesn't see it because it doesn't come back on the first page of results, or it's just not available. At that point, if it's not on the first page of results, it might as well not exist. Then there's that content you have but you don't need. It's redundant, it's outdated, it's trivial, right? Rot that's infesting your index, driving out the good content and pushing it down, right? And then there's the content, oops. This little controller here isn't really helping me much. The content we think we have, but we don't. So that content that people believe exists, but you've never actually written the content. The example I usually give here is a policy in my firm. Somebody knew that I ran search and said, Ed, I can't find the policy around hotel rooms. How far do I have to be from my office in order to expense a hotel room? Search is not working. So I went out and I looked and I ran the query multiple different ways, did things they wouldn't have thought of. I actually approached the HR organization and said, hey, how far do I have to be from the office before I can expense a hotel room? There's no policy on that. If your manager says you can expense the hotel room, you can expense the hotel room. If your manager says you can't expense the hotel room, then you can't expense the hotel room, regardless of how far away you are. But he was convinced that this content had to exist, that there had to be a document around this. And I'm sure the same thing's going to happen in your environment. So you have to think about that. Am I sure that the queries people are running, and we'll talk to this in just a minute about the logs and so on, are the queries people are running, are they able to get results? Does the actual result actually exist? So by paying attention to the content, we can improve search. So how do you know what's the right content? You can do user surveys, and we do a lot of this. We do an annual user survey around search and ask what content are you looking for, what kind of content do you expect in search. It's a big question because we have different, I'm sure any large organization, you're experiencing the same sorts of items where some people have one opinion, other people have another opinion, and they're expressing those opinions, and there's disagreement. So there's a group of people who feel that all content should be in search, and then there's another group of people who feel that search should only contain links out to their applications, not the content in the application. So the user survey tells us whether people are looking for just quick links out to applications or if they're looking for actually the content of the application. Stakeholder feedback, that's part of that listening to your users. Your users are your stakeholders. Your stakeholders are part of your user group. They are people who matter, and they have opinions about search and how search works. And then the best way I've found to know if we have the right content is to look at our search logs. We have, inside of SharePoint, you have top queries. So these are queries people are running. Run those queries yourself. Look at the results. Do they match what you would expect given that term? If they're not, there's things you can do, and I'll talk to that in just a minute. Look at your zero-hit queries. So this is a place where somebody ran a query and got no results. This, again, is in SharePoint. It's part of your standard set of logs that are available. It tells you a lot about places where search is failing, places where people are failing to find content where SharePoint is failing. So if you pay attention to this and you make changes on the basis of it, then your SharePoint adoption is going to go up, your search is going to be better, overall adoption is going to be higher. Same thing with abandoned queries. This is a place where somebody ran the query, they actually got results, but they didn't like them. They didn't click on anything, they didn't make any action with the search. So let me just show you a top query. We usually talk about the top query as being this zip curve where 80% of your traffic is in the first 20% of the queries. You may not see that. It's kind of more of a web-based idea than it is a intranet or SharePoint type idea, but you should be seeing some level of where you can make an adjustment to the queries to make for a better result on a smaller number of queries. So when we look at zero result queries, I mentioned before that this is a very important report. What you're looking for are missing content. You want to look for malformed queries, so places where people have used language that doesn't really match the language of your content. Places where you can either modify that through a spell checker option, did you mean, or a place where you can insert what's called a synonym. So you sit down and you say, if somebody runs this query term, transform that query into this query term because that's what they really mean, and include both in the results. You also want to look for encoding bugs, things where there's like special characters that people have included in the query, or the query itself has in some way become malformed, not because of something the user entered, but something that's happened with the interface. You're not going to see a lot of these, but they do happen, and they're a quick troubleshooting indication for you. What this zero result query does is it highlights the gaps in information, and it highlights some opportunities for you to either create new content, change the query that the person runs, make a change to the engine to help improve the user's experience. It also communicates customer needs, and you can use these reports, and we do this on a monthly basis. We have a meeting with everybody who is responsible for content inside the knowledge organization, and we say, here are the queries people are running. These are the top queries. Here's the results that are coming back. Are these results what you expect? Is this an opportunity for you to create new content around this query term? Is this an opportunity for you to modify the content that's already out there? Are we presenting to people the old content, or are we presenting the new best content? So that relationship with your content creators becomes really important. Really recommend that. That ability to communicate outwards to other departments really makes a big difference in your adoption of SharePoint. And this is also your opportunity to add terms to the spell checking dictionaries if you're running a dictionary, or to look for those, as I mentioned before, the acronym and synonym expansions. So then optimize that content for search. And I'm going to go back to my web example of Bing and Google, and why are those so great? Part of the reason that they're so great is because everybody who creates content on the web takes the time to think about how is that content going to come back on search. You know, there's another common saying, how do you hide something? Put it on the second page of Google results, right? Easiest way to hide something. Well, so when you've got that kind of competition going on, you've got an open environment and people are competing to be the top for different query terms, you're going to spend a lot of time optimizing that content for it. In an internal environment inside SharePoint, it's a lot harder to get people to spend time optimizing their content. We spend a lot of time actually trying to train our content creators on what it takes to make search better, what it takes to make their content come back for search. A little different from the web. And some of these slides are actually from material that we use for training. So make the obvious obvious. How do you optimize content? You take the time to put it in the right format and to make the right things become visible. So basic search engine optimization, you don't even think about it. You know, have a good title. I don't know if you've run queries inside your SharePoint environment and brought back documents and seen things like, say, title Arial bold, or proposal document, or CD. You know, these are bad titles. They're fine for a guy on his hard drive. They're not so good inside the SharePoint environment. Your abstracts often don't include key search terms. Inside SharePoint, the abstract is automatically generated, and it will take the keyword of the search, and it looks for reasonable terms within the document to match up to it. But it's still not going to really call out to people and pull it forward. And then the file names don't often reflect the content of the document. So again, you want to make if I can convince my content creators to do this, to actually give the document a title that would mean something to somebody other than themselves. If I can convince them to write the document in a way that approaches the keywords that they want to have it appear for, then I can make a better search experience for them. Okay. What we do is we find our heavy submitters. I mentioned we have these content meetings where we talk about top queries. Those are our heavy submitters. They're people who regularly create content. They're responsible for the content organization, and we go out and we talk to them. And we train them on how to fix their problems. So what are the most frequent mistakes in your environment? What kinds of things are they doing that's making their content not visible? And then we talk through best practices. These are what happen in the industry. These are the best way to organize your content or to make your content appear top of mind inside search. The awareness is self-perpetuating. You tell one person they've got a cool trick that they've found about how to make their content appear in search. They start posting on Yammer. They start telling their coworkers and friends about, hey, you can do this. This will make your life better. You need to find those evangelists and kind of prime them, give them the right information. But once they're out there, it just starts growing. And it's been really successful within the organization. It's part of the reason we've had the growth that I showed earlier. Now, this title is interesting. This slide is interesting to me because the original title of this slide was heading, because that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about how to make headings correct. So I submitted this through our organization to get everything approved for presentation to a large group of external people. And what came back was, you need a heading here. You can't just leave this generic heading at the top of this, okay? Because that's how important headings are. They tell you what the slide is about, right? And they tell you what the document's about. So you want to focus on your key topics in the content. Your average phrase or keyword search is at best 3 words. We're actually seeing it go down. It used to be like 3 to 4 words. It's now getting into the 1 and 2 words because they're getting better results off those 1 to 2 words, so they're willing to accept that. But 3 is about the most you're going to see. So whenever you're creating a heading, you want to keep to the most important keywords. You can have a longer heading, but you want to keep it to the most important keywords. So example of a keyword in our organization is tax. We have a lot of tax people in our organization. They do a lot of tax work. Another key phrase might be 2009 tax litigation, or legislation, sorry. So we want to be specific. So a general topic might be strategy implications. More specific is IPO strategy implications. You can see the difference just one word has made to that title. Strategy implications could be about anything. Could be about search strategy, content strategy, intranet strategy, how to design a strategy. IPO strategy implications, that's telling you what that's about. Just that one little bit more word that made it more specific made a big difference. Same thing happens with document titles. Same thing happens with file names. Okay, so this is part of that training I was talking about. I try to make these fit to people a little bit better. So what's a good heading for enterprise SEO? Making search appear, making documents appear well. So this actually works regardless of whether you're looking at search or browse. Whether you're in Delve, Office 365, SharePoint on-prem, it's all the same thing. What's going to show up and what's going to call people to come look at this? If I'm trying to sell my car on the web and I say, big sale, can't miss, picture a Craigslist. Got a big long list of things. One of them says, big sale, can't miss. I'm not going to click on that. Doesn't make any sense, right? I don't know what you're selling. Transportation that fits your style. Well, how do you know my style? Maybe I click on that and it's a motorcycle. I don't have a motorcycle endorsement. I have no interest in driving a motorcycle. I have a small son, right? Car for sale. Okay, at least I know that this is a car with 4 wheels, probably has a roof. We'll be okay there. But red, 5-speed, sports sedan, like new, great price, that tells me a lot more about it. You need to do the same thing with the titles that you give your documents inside SharePoint. If I'm looking through a list in SharePoint and I've got, inside of a library and I've got a bunch of titles and they're all big sale you can't miss, it's not going to help me any. Same thing for the idea around like a more enterprise type topic like say IPO content. What you need to know. What I need to know about what. I'm hoping it's about IPO because I searched for IPO, but it doesn't tell me that. Process insights from a leader. Still not working. Going public and trying to identify your next step. All right, that might be interesting. IPO, 5 insights into taking a company public, that's probably going to grab the most attention. You kind of have to think like some of those online content creators with the clickbait type headlines, but it has to be good content behind it, otherwise it's not going to work for you. But that's still an idea about what makes for a good heading. I put a link here for Nielsen Norman Group's article about good headings. It's worth reading if you have a moment. So this is a slide to talk about how important titles are, right? So we have this storefront. My boss took this picture. I like it. It's really a good picture about why titles are important. Let's look at this. We've got the National Fabrics Company. It's a discount center. They're having a clearance sale. I think you can all probably see that, even the people in the back, right? So I would walk into that store and I would think that I would find racks and racks of fabric, right, on sale at a low cost, okay? So there's this very tiny little sign. We do not sell fabrics. They sell fabric display items, not fabrics. And you know they had to put that sign up there because other people like me knocked on the door and tried to buy fabric, right? So that's what you're doing when you put those generic titles on content. And that's what I try to talk to whenever I'm talking to those stakeholders, those important content creators, is that you need to spend the time to create good titles. We can do some things to help. SharePoint does some things to help. There's some automatic title generation that'll happen in Office 365. There's some work that can be done around, going in and changing titles whenever you see a pattern that, is continually happening. There's some kind of default that's coming up. You can change those titles for them. We can help, but we're not going to be able to look at 1 million documents a month, read them, and distill a good title. The content creator needs to do that. I think we're all Office people, we're all Microsoft people. We know how important document properties are. I'm still going to talk to it just briefly. The document properties, regardless of whether you're looking at 2010, Office 2010, 2013, and I think even in 2016, are very important to search. They become metadata, okay? And that metadata helps improve your search results. It helps expand what the content's about. It helps, gives you that opportunity to include keywords that aren't available elsewhere. Just to give you an idea, here's what the typical properties will look like. The person might fill in their name. They might fill in the title, but they're not likely to fill in the rest. So I try to talk to people and our people about being sure that they fill in as many of these properties as they can. Okay. And then there's another one that's more on PDF format. Again, same idea. The PDFs even hold this content, have the ability to maintain these properties. These properties are available and become part of your environment and help make documents findable. All of this is about that content optimization. So far we've talked about the importance of having the right content and the importance of ensuring that content is findable. The next step in terms of making content findable is this metadata. Why should anybody bother to fill in the metadata? It takes that content and gives you the opportunity to tag it with the right terms, okay? In our organization, these are service line and subservice line. That's the way we go to market. Geography, industry, topic. So what am I talking about? What country is it related to? What industry does it apply to? What is the general topic it's about? With these, people can find the content that they're looking for. They now can narrow their query. They can now use those refiners to bring down to just the content that's about the country they're interested in, the geography they're interested in, the industry they're interested in, and the topic. I think, has anybody else at lunch noticed those big signs and they're trying to get us all to self-organize into different groups around lunch tables in terms of country or industry? I think they're trying to embed that same concept in our minds in terms of the metadata. But, again, people learn visually. So metadata will take this and turn it into this. So you go from having what I have at my home, it's not letting me go back, a jumble of books that you can't find what you're looking for, and I just kind of I like that because I like all of these books, so I can just grab one and be surprised, into a library where you can actually find the books that you're looking for and the content that you're looking for. I should mention, I have some t-shirts to give away. So if anybody has any questions and wants to pop in, the first 4 or 5 people will get a t-shirt. After that, I won't have any more t-shirts to give away. Okay. Oh, I got a question. Yes. Yeah, that's all part of it as well. These are our specific custom metadata. Then there's the built-in metadata that's part of SharePoint that you're talking to. Yep. Okay, so the question is that around metadata, and there is a need for different types of metadata, file type, content type, and usually there's a very large a conversation that goes on around what are these going to mean in our organization. Is that fair recap? And she's curious about, given the size of our organization, how that has gone. Wow, I'm surprised. Normally I can't throw that well. So that's a very good question, and actually the metadata team sitting, or some of the metadata teams sitting in the audience today, right behind you, Ann and Mary Gale lead the teams that handle that conversation. But it is a ongoing and continual struggle. Every 6 months, I would say, it is changing. Is that fair, or is it less than that? Okay, so about every 6 months or so, there's another time where we have the conversation. What we've established is a steering committee for metadata. And that steering committee represents the different stakeholders within the firm. So we have people who are from each of those service lines that I talked about, each of those sectors, industries that I talked about, and the different geographies. They're all in this group. And they, just like any other steering committee, some people attend, some people don't. You get different inputs at different times from different people. But it gives us a structure, a governance structure, that allows us to have focused conversations around the needs of each group and the ability to extend the metadata on the basis of those needs. One example I can give of where it was it still is a bit of a tussle, is in the geography that I mentioned up here as one of our key items. So geography for most of our service lines is just where you happen to be sitting, right? For tax, it's much more important because there's different practices in tax that are at the country level, the subunit within the country in the United States, the state level, and then the county and the city level. And each of those are very different jurisdictions and can have different laws that can apply. So what might be the right information to give someone at the city level is completely wrong to give them at a different country or a different county level. So we have to manage that, and that means we have really two different geography metadatas. We have the one that's for everyone else, and we have jurisdiction, which is for the tax group and for the tax content. And then managing how that works in terms of bringing that content to the fore is interesting, challenging. Whoa! I think I saw you first. Sure.
It's a challenge with the metadata with getting folks to check it for things.
Yep.
Are you guys doing any sort of automated classification and automated tagging and things like that?
We are. This is not a vendor-based presentation, so this is not an endorsement by the firm in any way, shape, or form. However, we are using concept searching as our automated metadata, and we're in the process. We have to build the clues, and it's there's different ways of approaching automated metadata. You can do it with rule generation, or you can do it with statistical generation. Concept searching is more of a rule-based, so it's you need to build all the rules out. That if it looks like this, then it probably is this, and it's working pretty well. Okay. Okay. You kept your hand up.
Well, she still has my question. The other half was, do you have any guidance on having tried encouragement and training versus enforcement? Like you can't
The
document without certain metadata or any approaches like that?
So we have both. We try to keep the enforcement to a minimum. It's interesting because that governance committee I was talking to, you have a group, I should repeat the question. The question was about trying to leverage encouragement versus enforcement, and what works better, I think is a good way to put it. So we work with both aspects, both encouragement and enforcement. We like, but the organization I'm part of is the Knowledge, EY Knowledge. It's the knowledge management organization within the firm. And our approach has always been around encouragement. You know, we need to bring people along. We need to use a carrot to make them see the value of the metadata. It's interesting that steering group I'm talking to, where the service line leadership is, they say we should enforce it. We should have 30 required fields. And then you go to the practitioner in the field and he says, I can't save something with 30 required fields. It takes too much time. I can't possibly do that. You need to make this smaller. So we've been able to keep it to just the ones I put up there. I think those are the 4 required. Service line, geography. No, industry is not required. Topic.
It's actually content, category, document type,
Okay.
and we don't use, we have language to be required, but we auto-classify on that now, so, and that's ultimately the goal.
Okay, so the content type is required. Otherwise, it's the 4 I've got up here. So topic should be, say, content type. I'll change it next time. Yes, sir? There is some, okay, so the question is about leveraging the defaults based into SharePoint in order to pre-populate metadata. And yes, there is some work that we do around leveraging those defaults, but not all team sites fall into and populate all of this. But it is possible to use that, yeah, I agree. Oh. Before I move on, any other questions? I have 9 people in total on search, including myself. We're broken out into, sorry, the question was about the team that works on search and how large it is. You know, I have an entire presentation that I do. It's about a half a day about how to develop the business case and to develop a true search program, not just half of a person trying to work on it, which is where I was 7 years ago. So we're broken out into, there's different aspects to search. There's enterprise search, which is that ability to find everything in the firm, and then there's application search, which is, you know, the ability to find content within an application. So we're broken out into people who work on application search and who work on the operational side of search.
Are you in the cloud,
Hybrid. Yeah, hybrid and on-prem.
2013?
Yeah, 2013. Okay. Yeah. Exchange is not one of my, okay, so the question is about Exchange and whether it's one of our content sources. Exchange is not one of our content sources at this time. There's been some privacy concerns around having email available via search. We try to explain the ability to do document security trimming and that only you would be able to see this content, but there's still a overall overriding concern that that content is too private to be included in our index. Yeah, there are third-party connectors that will do that, yes.
So what are you searching? Are you searching file systems, SharePoint?
SharePoint, the cloud, on-prem, and then what we call red box countries are all in the index.
How many scopes do you have?
3 scopes, everything, people, and conversations. We have multiple search centers for different applications. We're getting into kind of esoteric questions. Perhaps we can talk about this offline. I think I'm going to have to punt on that one to either Ann or Mary Gail. Yeah, we'll get together after the presentation. Okay, you've been patiently waiting, I'm sorry. Okay.
I set up my metadata with my synonym. So when my keywords
Okay, so the question is, inside managed metadata, we have synonyms that are applied to the content so that people tag the content correctly with the right term. But whenever people run queries, they're not, the search engine is not respecting those synonyms. It's bringing back, it's not doing the same thing. And the issue is that there are two separate synonym files in SharePoint 2013, one for managed metadata and one for search. And so you need to work with, you can either work with an IT team to develop like a PowerShell script to copy the one into the other, or you can manually create the new synonym. Each time you do a synonym in the managed metadata, you can create a new synonym inside your search environment. Does that make sense? It's in the search services application, the SSA. So it's a different application from the managed metadata application. In Office 365, you'll need to work with Microsoft around getting that applied inside your environment. But my understanding is that you have, I'm not leveraging a cloud-based search. My content's in the cloud, but I'm on-prem for search. So, but my understanding is that Office 365 team can help you make this happen. Okay. All right, I'm going to move forward. Okay. It sounds like there's a real strong need for a metadata session, and maybe, you know, Ann and Mary Gail can put together one for next time. So measuring search. Search is all about relevance. Relevance is all about people. It's not really about the algorithmic answer that you get, because the algorithm might say this is exactly the right document, but a human being will say that is exactly the wrong document, right? So you have to measure search against that human expectation of relevance. It's got to be subjective, user-based, and it's got to be on the basis of each query. You can't just randomly say, search looks good. You've got to look at each query and each set of results. It does take significant effort to do relevancy testing. Don't underestimate this. Early on, whenever it was just half of my time to work on search, I kind of underestimated how easy it would be to do this relevancy testing. It's a big deal. You can automate it, and we've done some of that with exporting the results out and automated scripts and so on to do the calculations. But there's still that base need for people to say this is the right content. So one way to do this, you can do this a lot of different ways. You can go out to a group of people and just say, hey, run some queries and tell me what you think on each of those queries. Give me a thumbs up, thumbs down. That's the easiest way to do it. It gives you a very coarse measure of relevance, but it gives you something to rely on, something you can say, yeah, things are going pretty well. Okay? But the other way to do this with I work for a group of accountants, a company full of accountants, so they're very interested in seeing numbered, measured documents. They want to see if it moves from 4.3 to 5.2, that needs to be significant. It can't just be, it looks good. So you have to establish this ideal set of documents or results for a given keyword search. All right? You sit down and you say, you get a group of users. We use what we call an SMR group, subject matter resources. I have people in the BRIC countries, the G10 countries, across all my service lines, who sit down and tell me, for this query, these are the 10 right documents. Okay, so now I know in Brazil, as a tax practitioner, when I run this query in English, this is the result I should get. When I run this query in Spanish, this is the result I should get. In Portuguese, sorry. Then you measure your search against this ideal. You run the query, and you say, does this look good? Does this not look good? How well am I doing against that? And that's where we get these, what we call precision, recall, and mean reciprocal rank. So precision is, I've got 10 documents that are supposed to come back whenever I run this query. I run the query proposal. These are the first 10 documents that should come back. Out of that, when I actually run it, how many of those 10 documents are in the results set? That's precision. Or how many of the first 10 documents, how many of the first 10 documents are those right documents, and how many of them are wrong? Recall is, out of all those 10 that I pulled back, those 10 I want to pull back, do I get them all eventually, or do I never get them all? And then mean reciprocal rank, there's usually one best document. Somebody will say, this is the right document. That's mean reciprocal rank tells you where did that best document fall in your results. That's 3 measures that let you measure how well search is doing. There's another more complex measure you can do, and we're moving towards this. It's called normalized discounted cumulative gain, and it combines your precision and mean reciprocal rank measures together. If you're interested in that, a quick Wikipedia search on normalized discounted cumulative gain will tell you as much as I do about that, because we haven't started using it yet. Okay. So identifying those queries. I'll be honest, we started off with this SMR program, and I said, well, just tell me what you usually search for. They don't know what they usually search for. It's like, I don't know what I usually search for. Okay, well, just kind of log what you do. That didn't work very well either because it was extra work. Instead, if I gave them a set of queries to work with, here's the top queries we have in your region, in your service line. What do you think? Now, all of a sudden, they found that very easy. They could just run them, look at them, give an opinion, say these are the right documents. So the more you can do to help the people doing the evaluation come up with a good set, the better off you are. Then you can also, you get that content back and you get the response from the search engine. So now you've got your queries, you've got your right result, you've got your response from your search engine, so you can actually do your calculation. Now that you've got a measure, so this is a repeatable tool at this point. Now I've got a stand-in for a human being. I've got a mechanism that I can use that tells me whether I'm doing better or worse. Then I can tune, and I can focus on improving the queries that are doing poorly with the search engine today. Depending on your environment, you're going to have different levels of tuning available to you. Generally speaking, SharePoint is a very tunable engine. You've got capabilities of modifying queries as they come in. You've got capabilities of modifying documents as they come into the index. And you have actual insight into the search engine algorithm. And you have the ability to adjust upwards or downwards based on different signals inside of the content. And it's what you're doing with this measurement and tuning is identifying what signals tell you that this document is more relevant versus what signals tell you that are indicating that this document is not relevant. Things that I'm talking about with signals can be as simple as the keyword appearing in the title, or can be more complex based on who the person is and how deeply in you go. And all of that's possible inside of, my understanding is that's possible. I know it's possible on-prem because we're doing it, and my understanding is you can do the same thing in Office 365, although I haven't done it. Okay? The base algorithm out of the box in SharePoint, there's an interesting, someone did an interesting study on how search is working inside of SharePoint, and they found that there's 3 stages to the algorithm. The first stage is giving you this very broad, what's called a vector-based search result. So it's taking and saying, given this keywords, these documents fall along the same vectors in a n-dimensional space, right? Then that's a very quick algorithm. It's very quick to execute, and it's one that's behind Lucene, if you're all familiar, and Solar, the 2 main open source search engines. Then there's the next algorithm that they run against it. They take a set of documents and they take the same set and they run another algorithm that's probability based, which is what's behind IDLE, is this Bayesian calculation of search relevance on the basis of how likely is it that somebody would have asked this question given this document. So they do that against the set of documents. And then this is the interesting part. Now that they've narrowed it down to a set of about 1,000 documents, they actually do a neural network of the different topic points and different algorithms, and that's how they come up with their final ranking. And they showed a 25% improvement in relevancy. I'm sorry, I'm boring you all. I will sit here and talk about this all day, but that's how they showed a 25% improvement in relevancy through these 3 algorithms. So getting in there and kind of tinkering with it, you need to be judicious, and you need to make sure that you're not going to make things worse. That's why you need the measurement. Early on, again, back whenever it was half my time working on search, I had this intuitive idea that if I could just take this factor and apply it to search, it would make search so much better. So I got a project together and we ran that project and we did measurement beforehand. I didn't have like a development environment where I could test it, so I just had to put it in place and then see what happened in production. And I got to production and I reran my measures and it was worse. And I'm lucky to still be working for UI today, let's just say. But it's because my intuition was wrong. And you don't know if your intuition is right or wrong. That's why you need the measurement. The measurement tells you, am I right or am I wrong? It's also why you need a development environment where you can test this stuff beforehand. Okay, so the next key factor was the great user interface for search. And you kind of get this out of the box with SharePoint. But I'm going to talk a little bit about what makes for a great user interface. I still have one more shirt, and if there are any questions, just raise your hand and I'll stop. So you really want to leverage the concepts from intranet search, right? Internet search, sorry. So e-commerce, you've got this idea of facets and faceted navigation. It's all based off of metadata. You've got autocomplete. I mean, whenever you run a query on Apple, you run a query anywhere, and it starts telling you, oh, other people have searched for this, or this is kind of looks like what you're looking for, and pre-completes your query. You've got best bets. This is what I think your right answer should be. You've got spell suggest. You've got suggested queries. All of these are great concepts. They're all built into 2013, and they all make your search a better user interface. The risk is that if you don't have good managed metadata, your facets aren't going to work, right? Because somebody will click on a facet and all of a sudden the right document disappears because somebody tagged it wrong. Your autocomplete, that requires really paying attention to what kinds of queries people are running and making sure you have good results for those queries. Because otherwise people get an autocomplete and they run it and then they get no result. So you've got to curate that whitelist. Best bets, this is a very targeted thing. I don't know if you're familiar with best bets in the audience, just real briefly. A best bet is where I run a query and I get one result right at the top of the results, and it's got a check mark next to it in SharePoint, okay? That's saying, and the way that works is you have curated that query. You've identified for that query, this is the right document or the right 3 documents or whatever set you want to run. That takes a lot of time. A lot of investment to make sure that those are right. Spell suggest, there's two ways to set that up. One is statistical algorithm against your index, and the other is having a curated dictionary list. There's arguments pro and con for both sides. I prefer the statistical algorithm because my index contains weird things like the acronym accelerator with an X instead of an E, and an older example is ABS, AABS. It was an old name for a service line, and there's no way that would have shown up in a dictionary list unless I added it, so I prefer that. You do have to know what not to include. And how do you do that? You know that by doing, first of all, you have to take a guess, right? You have to say, this is probably not going to be that valuable to my users. This is probably going to be more valuable. Because if you don't, you could check all the boxes, turn everything on, make everything work, and you get this page full of noise, right? You can't even find the search box anymore. You have to curate it. You have to pay attention to it, and you do this through user experience studies. And I don't know how familiar everybody is with the discipline of user experience design, but you can actually put the user interface in front of users, watch them interact with it, and discover which features work and which features get in the way. It was interesting to me the first time I ever watched a user experience study. I was just getting started, and we were doing a discussion forum. This is a long time ago. And we asked the person to submit a topic. There's a button, looked this big to me on the bottom of the screen that said submit. And they're like, I don't know how to do that. I can't see it. And it was just because it was on the left instead of the right, or on the right instead of the left. It was just not where they were looking for it. They were looking for it to be here, and it was over here. So it's interesting to watch those kind of studies after you've designed a design and to see how people really use them. The funny thing is you're doing a user experience study, and the first guy can't find it. You're like, oh, well, they're an idiot, right? They don't know what they're doing. The next person can't do it, and you're like, well, he must be his brother. I don't know. The third person can't do it, and you're going, well, maybe I got this wrong. The fourth person can't do it, and you're like, okay, I've got a problem here. I've got to fix this. All right. So that you need to do the user experience study. You need to watch people, and you need to have the data. It's nice to have somebody go off and do the study for you and bring back a report, but the real impactful part is when you watch somebody struggling with something that you've just built and that you all argued over features for hours, and that feature just turned out to not work right. Okay. Yeah. So the question is, within our user interface, do we use a lot of different search scopes to help across the wide breadth of data that we have? Is that fair? No. We did something similar to search scopes in the old legacy environment where I showed we had like 200,000 queries per month happening, and now we have over 1 million. It was routinely came back in feedback and in studies that these different domains, these different scopes, were confusing. I can't find what I'm looking for. I don't understand the difference between them. I'm not getting this. We tried different. We went through and we said, okay, well, that's not because scopes are a bad idea. That's because we've just picked the wrong names for these scopes. I mean, the scopes were pretty common. They were, a set of documents, a set of resources, our policies, people data. So we tried different names for all of those. That didn't help. We tried different types of scopes. We tried basing it out on different, where the content is stored type things. That didn't help. So for my users, I'm not going to say anything about your users. For my users, in my experience with search, they are better off with an everything search that then can get them to all of the content and narrow down on it as your intranet search, your broad search across the firm, and not to present that complexity to them whenever they're in a application-based search. Give them still the ability to go back to the intranet if they want to, but in the application, then you have defined scopes for that application. So now they have a context in their mind about where I am, what kind of content I'm searching. So now I've got a very narrow set of content within the whole group, and I'm searching only against that set of content. That seems to be working. And again, the data is backing that up. Does that answer? Okay, we could talk off. Okay, so the question is, given that we have such a broad breadth, a broad organization with a lot of different business units, a lot of different geographies, how do we get to that specific Asian business unit, as an example? We're using the metadata to do that in the broad search. Refiner, yeah, all refiner based. Yep. That's how we're handling it. It may not be perfect, but it's good enough that people are using it and finding it helpful. Okay. Any other questions? Yeah. There's a mic if you want to. Okay. Well, so the question is about languages. How are we handling that? The language metadata is auto-classified because it's quick and easy to identify. Secondly, you can search in your native language. SharePoint 2013 does offer the ability to search in multiple languages, and we have all the language packs applied. But a lot of our content's in English, and so it's not really becoming too much of an issue. We're at about 85% of those documents are English-based documents. Okay. Further, refiners will allow you to narrow. If you run your query in French and it turns out that that's one of the languages, one of the words English is borrowed from French, you can narrow your query using the geography or the service line to get down to just the content that I'm interested in. Okay. I'm looking around to see if there's any other questions. Yeah? Is how to search part of our onboarding. Not as much as I'd like. We get 3 days to onboard people, and it's a pretty packed agenda. Most lunch periods are spent, doing work as well. There's about 15 minutes on how to search and how to use knowledge, which is, more than it used to be, but not as much as I'd want. I mean, I would really prefer. One of the things we're looking at with classes is to try and do a video type session that's an on-demand thing where people can just click on it. We also have quarterly sessions on how to optimize content, how to create content and make it findable. Okay, but it's a little tiny piece of our onboarding, very little. Yeah.
UX question. In your experience, would you recommend highlighting best bet results or just letting them float to the top?
That's interesting. I had a conversation with PricewaterhouseCoopers, I think. their search guy, and he's like, no, we don't highlight those best bets. People glance right over them because they're seen as advertising.
We're suspecting the same effect.
Yeah, it's a possible effect. We did a brief study, not very big. Again, this would be a great opportunity for a user experience study where you would sit down and present people with queries that presented best bets and queries that didn't, and see how they reacted to it. We did like a guerrilla study with 5 people and just said, hey, could you try this? Who weren't part of the search program, weren't part of the findability group, but were a completely separate group. And they didn't have that problem. They didn't see those as ads. They were very pleased with them. That might be because we curate those very well. They are almost always the right result. They're not some business deciding to advertise their business inside of search. It's something that we've identified as being the right result. You had a question?
Yeah, more of a curiosity question. How many items do you have in the index right now?
Okay, so the question is, how many items do we have in the index right now? I'd have to go look at my laptop to see it right now, but the last time I looked, it was 9.5 million items in the index, of which that includes, somebody else had asked for scope of search, that includes on-premise SharePoint content, Office 365 SharePoint content, OneDrive content, as well as the activity stream within SharePoint, the conversations that happen in SharePoint. That's growing at about 1 million documents per month. Sometimes less, sometimes more. It depends on if it's a holiday, it's lower. If it's not, seasonality. Okay, other questions before I talk to this slide? Yep. If you come up to me after the presentation, I'll give you my email, and I think I've got a slide up here with it on it. And I'll be sorry. Let me repeat the question. The question was, given the material that you've done and the work that you've been doing, do you have any white papers or other material that talks to some of the earlier parts of your journey? Because I'm at that point, and I'd like to hear more about that. And I used to have them all up on SlideShare, but I was slapped and not allowed to do that. But I can share it with you. So if you reach out to me on email or Twitter, I'll be glad to send you all of the presentations that are out there. Okay? Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions. So just briefly, listening to your users. Okay, this is the key aspect. And maybe this is because I have a usability background, a user experience design background. But to me, if we don't listen to the users about what they're experiencing with the application, we can't get a good adoption, right? With search, the way to listen to your users is look at your search logs. They are your clearest, most unambiguous example of what people are looking for and the experience they're having with search. That zero-hit query log should be 0. There should be no queries where somebody is running a query and they're getting nothing. I'm not there. I probably never will be there, but that's my mental model, because if you run a query and you get 0 results, that means you think there's content and there's nothing out there. So there's probably something I can do, like create a policy page that says, we have no policy on hotels, ask your manager. Right? Incorporate a feedback button on your search results page. I've got this as my second bullet. I don't have it. Okay, my project to put that in there hasn't been run yet. We're still working on it. But you do want to follow up on that negative feedback. When people come back to you and they say, and this, in our old environment, we got a lot of this. I would get an email that would say, search sucks. I'm looking for this. I can't find it. So I would go, they'd give me their name. I would send them an email, and I would say, here's how I found the thing you were looking for. So I'm trying to train them. Now, admittedly, that's a one-by-one, very handcrafted, artisanal way of approaching problems. But to be honest, it helped my feedback overall. It helped everybody stop saying search sucks. They started saying Ed's great, which is what I want to hear, right? You want to build that representative network of users, that SMR group. For you, it might be smaller. It might not be as important to cover global, and it might be more important for you to cover, your local area or your local group of users. But you want to have that. You need to have a group of people you can trust, that you can go to them and say, hey, try this new thing, tell me what you think about it. A group of people who can actually serve as your representative users, who will take the time to give you those queries so you can measure. And then you want to share that data with stakeholders. One of the key things and the hardest thing for me to do is talk to people about what we're doing and to sound like we're being successful. And this was the hardest presentation I've ever done because I just stood in front of a large group of people and said, I'm doing things right. That's hard for me because all I can see are the places where we're not doing things right. All I can see are the problems we have and we need to address. But I just came in front of you and I just told you I'm doing it right and here's how you can do it. So good for me, great. But you want to do that same thing with your stakeholders, and that's where I have a real problem because they're going to fire me if they don't agree with me. But that's okay. Get in front of your stakeholders and tell them, here's what we're doing, here's the achievements we have, here's the way that things are getting better, here's the plan for going forward. So whenever you're early on, you need to set a strategy. You need to build that strategy, and you need to tell people what that strategy is. Jeff Fried had a presentation, I think Tuesday. It was really good about building a strategy, and it was on any strategy. If you go to the Ignite site, you can download that presentation. You can watch the video. That's one of the things I love about this conference is the things that I don't get a chance to see, I can still go and see. So that's really good. So go out, talk to people until you're so sick of hearing about it, you can't believe you're going to say the same thing again. And you got to keep doing it because the person you're talking to didn't hear you the first time you said it. They didn't hear it the second time, but they finally did hear you the third time because they're too busy doing other things. That's understandable. And then show that impact. Go out and tell people we're doing well and here's how we're doing well. Make sure that they understand why this is important to the business, not just important to you or to your organization, but to the entire bottom line or top line of your company. Okay? So now I've got a question slide. We still have some time. So if anybody has any other questions in general, I'm going to put up my contact information. If you can come up to the mic so I don't have to repeat the questions, that would be great. Otherwise, if you can't, I understand, and I'll call on you.
We get a lot of content from like scanned documents. So the practice is, scan documents where sometimes those we already may not recognize text, what.
Yeah, that's rough. I mean, okay, so the question is around, I didn't hear it on the mic, so I'm just going to repeat it again. The question is around scanned documents and OCR, because OCR is like 80% successful, right?
Right.
So there's always terms that it didn't get or it didn't understand. I don't have a best practice around that, and I'll be very direct. It's because I don't have that many scanned documents in my environment that I'm trying to search. I would recommend looking at common mistakes that happen. Look for synonyms that you can do to expand the search so that you'll bring back those documents. And then the other thing you could also do is leverage some of the pipeline material that happens in SharePoint 2013 to inject content and metadata to those scanned documents.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Next.
Yeah, we live in a big bowl of acronym soup. Do you have any guidance on ways we can extract acronyms to build a dictionary?
Yeah, we have a big bowl of acronym soup too. I think it took me 2 years before I could talk in my firm because I didn't know all the acronyms. And we use two things to try and help with acronyms. One is we have a set of query rules that do nothing but define the acronym. So if you put in a search query for ABS, it comes back and says ABS is the old name for the advisory and assurance service lines. So try searching for advisory and assurance. So we have a whole series of those. Obviously, that's a bit of a Red Queen game. You're always trying to catch up. But the other thing that we do with acronyms is the synonym expansion. So we take TAS and expand it out to transaction advisory services and that kind of thing to try and help the person. See, what happens, the other thing that happens in our environment, I don't know about yours, is like we have an acronym P2P, okay? It's a common acronym. Everybody uses it, and they all mean different things. Some people mean procure to pay. Some people mean, I can't think, people to people. All have different meanings for it. So the synonym expansion doesn't really help that much with that because you've got to do too many synonyms and too much expansion. But we do during the search content optimization sessions, we talk to people about using both the acronym and the fully spelled out acronym within the document. I feel like sometimes I'm teaching high school English, right? But that's what you need. That makes search better. Come back over to here.
You mentioned about 85% are English and 15% are other languages, your documents. But have you ever considered that these are 15% are not being searched by majority of them and maybe doing automatic translation or something for them, for the crawling part?
I'm not following the question.
The 15% of the documents are not being searched by the majority of the users.
Okay.
So have you ever considered maybe using automatic translation or something so the crawler can maybe translate to English and all of them can be searched? Have you ever considered such a?
Yeah, okay, so in terms of language translation, auto-translation works fairly well. It's an option. It's expensive, and we haven't had enough complaints to see the need to invest in it. So I can't really talk to it very much. Sorry, but I think you're right. That's a good approach to having multilingual content, trying to do translation of both the query and the content to match up. But it will quickly. That's another area where you're going to end up trying to bail the ocean, right?
But being 15%, probably I was thinking only if you translate this 15% only to English, it may be that majority of them may be able to get all of them, at least to a good part. But, yeah.
We should probably talk offline because I'm not following through the mic. I'm sorry about that.
This question pertains to the volume of data you have.
Uh-huh.
You have 9 million documents. I'm sitting around 3.
Okay.
But it's taking multiple days to do the full index crawl because
Really?
we have a lot of PDFs.
Okay.
Do you have a lot of PDFs?
It's our second most common document type.
And rough guess on how long yours takes to do a full crawl?
Well, yeah, to do a full crawl, it's a week.
It's a week. Okay.
Yeah, but
So-
we're not doing full crawls. You know, okay. Anybody from Microsoft in the room? Please cover your ears. Microsoft will tell you you never need to do a full crawl. That incremental crawl will catch everything. That's not true.
No.
You're doing a full crawl more frequently than you would expect. Almost every change you make, you need to, like search schema changes, you need to do a full crawl. What we're able to do is do the full crawl in the background and not stop the incremental crawls. So we've got incremental crawls going on, search being served, and full crawl going on. And then that way the full crawl goes through and picks up and catches all of those problems. The incremental crawl picks up all of the changes to the documents and the new documents that are coming in. And then that way we get we don't have to, in the old environment I would have to shut down search for a week and say, hey, this index is a week old now, and then bring in a new index and then do a delta crawl. With the ongoing continuous crawl, you can avoid that.
Okay. And is that a 2013 opposed
Yeah,
to 2010?
Yeah, it's 2013. 2013 adds continuous
Background.
crawl.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. That'll be my next step.
Okay. Coming back over to this side.
What's your strategy? Ooh, that's loud. What's your strategy to search against data that does not exist in your residing SharePoint SQL backend?
We're still exploring that. My strategy is to index it. So SharePoint 2013 will index content that's not in SharePoint. It's a project. You have to establish a connector. You have to create, and map the metadata that's in that content to the metadata that's in SharePoint. You have to do some form of auto classification as it comes through. But it's possible. It's a relatively reasonable project.
Yeah.
The other strategy is federation, and that seems to be the one that again, we're having conversations, stakeholders on different perspectives. There's a group of stakeholders who feel federation is the right way to go. So what that would be is you would use, in 2013, you would use something called OpenSearch to send a query to the other engine that has the content, some other engine that's indexing that content, and then bring back the results in a result block in the results.
Okay, great.
Okay. I prefer indexing.
Yeah, because right now all of our documents are stored in an external system. I manage, I'm sure you're aware of.
2013 hybrid will let you stand up a 2013 on-prem, index the content, and then send that index to the cloud, and then they'll run the Office Graph against it. So you can actually tell it different signals to apply for Office Graph as well.
Okay. Great. Thanks so much.
We actually only index content outside of SharePoint if you want to talk after.
So you had a question?
Yeah, you mentioned showing statistics by region and that kind of thing. Are you using anything besides what's out of the box for statistics reporting? Would you recommend anything?
Okay, so we are using out of the box right now. We're in the process of implementing web trends. Again, not a EY saying this is the right vendor to use for your situation, but we're finding it to be a reasonable choice. However, it surprised me how much that is all custom reporting. There's no like out of the box web trends reports for SharePoint 2013 search.
Okay.
Okay.
We're having issues with more specific reports that our clients
Okay.
want in-house.
Yeah, it's always tough, isn't it?
All right. Yeah, thanks.
Sir?
Yeah, hi Ed. My question is about, we're in the phases right now of moving to 2013, and I'm trying to understand, we were architecting it out to where the search service would actually use the managed metadata service for its dictionary, but I heard you talking earlier, is that a limitation of it? Is it not able to use the enterprise managed metadata application?
No, it can use the managed metadata application to identify. So as content comes in, you identify crawled properties within the content. Okay, and that's through a set of rules. It's part of the connector. Those crawled properties can be promoted to managed properties, and they become part of the managed metadata system. And then they can be used for refiners or for boosting or for other features inside a search. The area that is separate is this idea of synonym. So you have a managed metadata set of synonyms, which is good, and you have the ability to use those synonyms to get people to apply the right term. So if they type in P2P, you can say, I want that to be procure to pay, right? That set of synonyms does not exist inside the search engine. You need to move that set of synonyms into the search service, into the search engine's synonym list. It's a different list. I don't know why, it just is. So you can do that manually. Okay, when managed metadata says we're going to add this synonym, you add this synonym, bring it together. You can do it in an automated fashion using, I believe, PowerShell. We're not doing that, so I'm not 100% sure how it would happen, but you can work with Microsoft on making that happen.
Okay. All right, so it can use it, but it's the synonyms piece that you need to be able to copy over to the search service application in order to get that to work based on, like you say, P2P. And All right. Thank you very much. That clears it up.
How did you go about soliciting feedback to get your success story that you could share with your senior leadership? Your search-related success story.
Search-related success story.
Your last slide.
I kind of started it with the slides up front with the growth and the level that we're having in terms of the growth. Is that what you're talking to?
No, you solved a business problem with search, and you were using that as on your last slide.
Yeah, that's one of the things. So my business problem with search was, I can't remember. I'm at a loss. I'm sorry. I've completely forgotten. We looked at.
Did you do a survey or something?
Well, we did a search survey that told us that people were looking for everything. We demonstrated that in order to search for everything, we needed to follow these 5 principles. In order to show that search was successful, we took the old environment and the queries that were being run against the old environment and showed the queries and those same queries against the same content in the new environment in order to show that the new environment was better than the old environment. But that's not the case that got me that won me the people.
Yeah.
That was more.
Those are your metrics. That doesn't solve a business problem.
Yeah, it's not solving a business problem. Let's talk offline because for some reason I'm drawing a blank. I can't think of why. You got to have that business story. Yeah. Any other questions? Go ahead.
I was going to answer his, but did you have any technical reason that you decided to keep all your SharePoint infrastructure on-prem as opposed to move it online, or is that just a migration?
No, it's
midpoint.
Okay, so the question is around SharePoint on-prem versus the cloud. Why did we choose to deploy on-prem? Was it because of some technical infrastructure problem, or was there another reason? It's another reason. Our environment, EY is a very regulated environment, and our contracts require that certain content not leave our hands. And so the contract is not written with the cloud environment in mind. So we have to have an on-prem search in order, got to connect the dot there. Information security determined that the index has to be treated the same as the content in the index. So if the content can't leave a country, then the index can't leave a country. If the content can't leave EY, then the index can't leave EY. So in order to meet that requirement, which is a legal contractual requirement, we have to have on-prem search. So we are doing a reverse hybrid compared to what everybody else is talking about. We're indexing the cloud into our on-prem environment. And as far as I know, we're the only ones at Microsoft doing that. And it means that I don't get Delve. It means that I don't get Office Graph. I don't get Yammer integration in our Office 365 environment. A lot of the really cool features that they're plugging here and plugged last year, we don't get.
Right. I work in pharma, so it's the same
situation.
Same situation.
Yeah, okay. Anything else?
Yeah, how big did you say your team was that's actually helping you manage the search?
9 people, including myself.
And are you guys all technical, hands-on guys also?
No, we're actually, none of us are technical. We're all business. We have a group of people in the IT side, but they're fungible resources. So they come on board for a project, they work that project, we get them up to speed on search and how search works, and then they move off of that project.
Okay,
So we've developed, we're more power users than IT.
So do you have access to the farms? I mean, do you put in the managed properties and everything?
Yeah, I have access to the farms. I have access to the SSA. I can do anything I need to. That was a difficult.
Do you do that stuff, or so you work with a business? You
some
define
I do,
the queries.
some I don't. Depends
Okay.
on what needs to happen.
So then, how big is your team?
9.
But you just told me that there's other people that do that work.
Oh, okay. So but they're fungible resources. They're not full-time search people.
Oh, they work on SharePoint doing other stuff,
right?
Like OneDrive and whatever, and then you just pull them in as needed to build the managed properties or scopes or content sources or whatever.
Well, we do scopes. We do the managed properties. We do content sources. What we don't do is, like, if a new application needs a new search center with a completely, like, a very heavy, not web parts, but .NET development, then a .NET developer will get involved in that project, and we provide that .NET developer with the information they need, our search schema and so on.
Very good. You don't patch a farm, build the farm, none of that stuff. Manage moving down the road. You're not planning for that. It's a whole different team.
Yeah, it's a whole. We have a group of people who do operations, and they're responsible for scoping on size. And I've made them very aware of the fact that we have 1 million documents per month coming in, and we need to think about that. And we have, system-wise, those queries I showed, those are user queries. When a system runs a query, we're running 100 queries per second, not 1 million queries a month. I mean, we're talking 1 million queries in a couple hours.
Yeah, I'm happy for you that you got 9 people working on it.
I'm glad it's set up that way, because if I had to worry about it.
That's good. Thank you.
Anything else?